I'm here with Mark Davies, Chief Executive of the Scarlets this morning, who will give detail on some of the key issues being asked by our supporters at present, as well as giving some insight into the challenges ahead and what is being done behind the scenes of the Scarlets to keep progress on track. Good morning, Mark. Belated Happy New Year to you, and thank you for taking time out of your busy schedule after Christmas to answer some of the key questions being raised by our supporters. Can you give us your reflections on the recent spell of Scarlets rugby during a very intense past 6 weeks in both the Heineken Cup and the Rabo Direct Pro 12?
Well, the biggest reflection I would say is it's been tough, hasn't it? It is professional sport and we are talking about the top teams in Europe, so it's been a tough run-in. It was always going to be difficult, we knew that, and that in itself was exciting. That's the way we would look at it. But we've had a tough Heineken Cup group. We've had the LV on top of the Pro 12, and we've had to manage that in an international window, which is difficult to manage a consistency of squad and a consistency of players and a consistency of game, a consistency of play, basically. So we knew it was going to be a challenge, and it has been. What can I reflect on? I think we've learnt an awful lot. I think we've learnt a lot about the dynamic of players coming through the squad in and out of the international period. I think we've learned a lot about selection, and I think we've learned a lot about how we go into the tactics of approach of any game. So I think it's been a huge learning period, and very often most of us learn lessons faster and more significantly when things are tough, and we have. So I think it will prove to have been a significant period for us in developing both as a coaching group and a squad. So I think ultimately that hard time will turn out to be very, very positive. And if you look at it practically, if you take the last 2 weeks, including this week, we will have played the best resourced, most successful teams with the strongest squads in Europe over the last 2 years in 3 consecutive weekends. Now that is an opportunity to learn, that is an opportunity to understand where we are. And ultimately, yes, it's been tough. Yes, it's been intense. Yes, we've made some mistakes. Yes, we faced those mistakes. But it will have been a huge learning period that will be very, very positive for us going forward.
What would your response be to some more negative comments from critics saying there's something missing from the squad dynamic at the moment on the field?
I think my first response to critics would be that sometimes the comments and the way they're delivered are not helpful. I do believe we have a incredibly honest coaching group and squad, and I don't think it helps sometimes with the way that some of the comments and criticism is voiced, and that's disappointing, frankly. Outside of that, in terms of something missing, I would say that perhaps the biggest thing that's been missing from time to time is a high proportion of our first choice players, and that's the reality that we have to learn to manage. Of course, that's a big opportunity for our wider squad, but it's been very difficult to create a consistency. And therefore, from time to time, superficially, it may have appeared that something's missing. What's more helpful and practical is to understand the detail of what has happened in a game, whether that's by individual or by group or by the successful execution of our tactics or not. So the devil is in the detail, and I think the superficial comments are often not helpful.
There's been some change in terms of coaching setup this season. 6 months in now with a new group. What has impressed you with the way that the group has worked together?
Yes, I don't think anybody should underestimate the scale of that change. We were put in the position that we were at the end of last season. That was a significant difficulty, and this coaching group, and Simon particularly, stepped up and put their hands up to take us forward. That was earlier than we anticipated, so that also was always going to be a challenge. The group is really, really impressive. It's a very young group. Obviously we're only 6 months in. The way they work together and the dynamic in which they work together as a team, that's the most impressive aspect. Huge honesty about the group, both individually and collectively. Massive work rate and commitment. I'm fortunate enough to be able to see what happens at 7 o'clock in the morning when they're in. I'm fortunate enough to be able to see them working overnight on the analysis after a game. Their work rate, their intensity, their desire and their appetite for learning is phenomenal, quite phenomenal. So I think they're a genuinely impressive group. I'm not alone, because again, I'm lucky I get other chief executives and other coaches speaking to me, and I know what the view of our coaching group is from people in that same environment that really know, really understand how tough it is, understand how lonely it is, and everybody is very, very positive about our group. So I think we're in a very fortunate place. I think they've achieved an incredible amount in 6 months, and they're still on course to achieve the goal that they set themselves for the start of the year, which was Pro 12 playoffs. If they can achieve that as a new group in their first season, remarkable.
It should be a proud moment for all Scarlets when our coaches and players are selected above others for the country. As you mentioned, 13 players with Wales already this season. Are there any concerns from your perspective about losing our coaches for certain periods to Wales? Not concerns as such, but we've got to be practical, we've got to be realistic, and we've got to make sure that in no way does that weaken our performances. So we have to ensure that either we can structure ourselves to manage the periods when any coach isn't here, or we structure ourselves to ensure that we bring in resource to cover what we need to happen in that period. Practically speaking, as I said, coaching, pretty lonely vocation in many, many ways, and there's nowhere to hide. So actually finding environments to go out and learn that take you out of your own environment, that's quite critical. We all learn in new environments, we all learn with fresh experiences. So ultimately for us, it will be a big benefit. Ultimately that means a big benefit for Welsh Rugby. Particularly it's a big benefit for us when they come back with new ideas, fresh thinking, just from being outside in another place. So our job is then to make sure that we configure that we're not weakened in the periods that they're away, either through making sure that our structures fit around that, or by ensuring that we've got resource that we're bringing in to cover them. Our supporters are obviously keen to hear about any contract extensions or signings. Will we have some good news coming in the next few weeks on that front?
Yeah, I guess that's the regular sort of question at this time of year. As usual, we set some clear targets for recruitment back in October, actually, that the board agreed in October. That's based very much on making sure that we are clear about our priorities to strengthen the squad, either from a position or a tactical point of view. Again, we've had a lot of changes through the piece, so we have to be conscious of that. And the guys have been working very hard to make sure that we have the right solutions for those targets over the last 3 months. As usual, once we've got to the position that the ink is dry on a piece of paper and that everybody who is affected is clear in and of themselves, then we'll announce it first of all to our support base. But we're working hard, some good directions that will put us in a stronger position. So yes, when we're ready, there'll be some good news.
A lot is said about the Scarlets' contribution to its community and our role as a rugby region to inspire a new generation in sport, fitness, as well as personal achievement. As Chief Executive, is this something that you want to see running through all that the Scarlets stand for, and how do you do that in reality?
Well, in answer to the first question, absolutely, that is something that not, I think, necessarily is going to be something that the Scarlets stand for. I think it always has, at a level. I think we can be better at delivering it, but we can always be better at everything we do. Obviously for any form of sport, particularly in today's environment with the issues of health, the medical issues as generations progress, there's no doubt that particularly for youngsters it's absolutely critical. At the same time, when you're in West Wales, then I believe it's critically important that we help and influence attitude and state of mind, and just try and encourage youngsters to try their best, whatever they're doing, whether they're playing rugby or whether they're choosing anything else. Just try your best and reach the top of your potential, whatever that is, in whatever direction. How do we do that? We do that by working with the communities. What does that mean? By working with clubs, by working with schools, by working with youngsters in any form of interface that we can. I do think we've got better at working with the clubs. Last season, we had about 110 player visits out. We had over 100 hours of community coaching out in the region. We had something like 3,000 youngsters go through coaching with Scarlets coaches and Scarlets players, and that's an inspiration. I go to some of those sessions and it's wonderful to see the look in the kids' eyes. We had a huge number of youngsters through the stadium last season, and for a 7-year-old and 8-year-old, win or lose, it's a fabulous occasion and something that they'll always remember. We can be better again at working with the clubs, of course. We can do more at working with the schools within our level of resource, and it has to be a core part of our mission because it's part of our responsibility to the community that we're a part of.
Tough economic times over the past few years has seen the world change, businesses having to adapt and make difficult decisions for survival. Sport can't operate outside that reality. So what are you doing to help create and maintain a sustainable region?
That's a very good point, I think. The economic circumstances are hard. They're hard for every individual in the street, and they don't look like they're going to be getting any easier anytime soon. So what we've got is what we've got. There's no magic solutions, and we have to be real about that, and we have to understand that ultimately we're running a business in a tough environment as well. Just because it's a sport makes no difference, and it's we do have to make some tough decisions. Last year we took probably nigh on £500,000 worth of cost out of the business. We increased our turnover again in our venue business. So that's the 349 days when Scarlets aren't playing in our facility. So what we have to do is we have to continue to work very, very hard to drive revenue, to drive every pound we can. And we have to work very, very hard to take cost out of the business and be more efficient. Actually, that's Scarlets, yes. That's the whole of Welsh rugby, and practically that's the whole of rugby anywhere in the world as far as I can make out. because nobody is in a position where they can ignore the climate that we're in. So for us, we just have to work harder, smarter, faster to focus on the key areas that drive revenue and control costs.
The economic impact study recently commissioned proved that as an iconic international sports brand and growing events business, the Scarlets played a pivotal role as an economic stimulus for the region, with a direct contribution of 16.1 million per annum into the local economy, which is set to grow to 32 million a year by 2016. A staggering cumulative economic impact of the study by 2015-16 will be 117 million for the local economy. How much work and time is dedicated to finding new ways to bring events, people, tourism, investment into this region via the Scarlets brand?
Well, as you say, that's a massive contribution to the economy by any standard. A massive level of employment locally, and a huge driver of people into Carmarthenshire, into Llanelli, and a significant support for an area which has got its unique challenges economically. So I think we should all be very proud of that reality, which is a third-party analysis, and illustrates just what our level of contribution is. How much work goes into that? It's incessant. We don't have a big team of people. In terms of the way that we operate as a business outside of rugby, there's a handful of people. There's 2 people selling the venue every day. And again, that's something that the only answer we find is hard work. We've got some fabulous facilities, and bit by bit, we're raising their profile and drawing attention and putting on some significant events. So it was a huge achievement to put on certainly the biggest rugby dinner, and as far as we understand, the second biggest ever dinner in Wales on October the 31st to celebrate and honour the achievement of the players from 40 years ago in 1972. That was 1,200 people for a 3-course silver service meal that went without hitch. And that illustrated what we're capable of doing and brought people to Carmarthenshire. We have the darts now, again, the World Darts, that we've just confirmed. As I understand it, within 3 or 4 days of being on sale, one of the hospitality packages already sold out. That'll be 2,000 people into Carmarthenshire. So all of those events take time. Bringing people like the Confederation of British Industry, the CBI, here for their events, that takes time. Our network is growing of contacts, and fortunately, generally when people come here, they are impressed with what they find, they're happy with the service, they're happy with the facility, and they come back. So our customer retention is good. But again, it takes a lot of hard work to ensure that we're using these facilities 365 days a year, and I think we should be very proud of the level of contribution that we're making into society, identified by that report.
You've been at the heart of the discussions and work alongside the WIU around the PwC report, and now the newly formed board, the PRGB. Are you optimistic about what can be achieved through partnership?
I'm always optimistic about what can be achieved through partnership, and I'm optimistic in this case with the work that we've done. There's been a level of honesty and collaboration through the piece, and I guess the reason I'm optimistic is because I truly believe that there is sufficient resource across the whole of Welsh rugby that if we can configure that resource better, whether that's people, structures, money, anything, then we can improve on what is already in areas a successful model. So I know from other countries that they are envious in many ways of our development pathways, about our capability of identifying and developing and fast-tracking talent. We do that well. So if we can work together as a collective across the regions with the WRU, considering the whole of Welsh rugby, then I believe that we can improve again on where we are.
So much has been said about where the regional game in Wales is, the crowds, the Welsh region's achievements in Europe, the loss of players to clubs with huge squad budgets of 20-30 million euros in some cases compared to our 3.5 million. What are your reflections on what needs to change and how to go about it?
Well, yes, it's tough. It is tough. And the reality is we're in a market economy. And there are evidently businesses and people out there that will make decisions in a very different way to what we will. We can only do what we can only do. Now, having said that, for sure, we punch above our weight. For me, that's part of the delight of Scarlets. Scarlets always has punched above its weight. We continue to do so. That's the right place for us to be. But we need to move forward from where we are. So our ambition doesn't change. For us to provide the right level of inspiration, we need to be performing consistently at the top level. We've started this year by wanting to perform consistently at the top level of the Pro 12 League. If we can do that consistently, and when we do that consistently, then we will want to perform also at the top of Europe consistently. To do that, yes, we need more resource, and that's partly where our route has been that the only way for Welsh Rugby to configure that together is to set it as a target for Welsh Rugby, and then between us work out how we do that, in what order, and what structures we bring to bear that will enable it to be both sustainable and competitive. None of us have any desire to be competitive for a moment and then diminish. So we have to work hard to build for more resource on the field to be able to compete even better than we're competing today.
If you had to sum up 2012 and the first part of our new season in 2013 for the Scarlets, how would you describe and measure the progress made?
I think I'd describe the fact that we've been managing substantial change in a tough competitive environment, whether that's economic or whether that's on the field. We've got a completely new coaching group. We've got a new playing squad with quite a number of changes, and that's a lot to manage. That's a lot of change to manage. We are making progress. I think we're making considerable progress, and I think we have seen that on the field, and we will continue to see that on the field as we now progress through into the Pro 12 running. So I'm looking forward to every game at the moment because I see us going forward, and I'm looking forward to that Pro 12 running of 9 games to see what we can deliver there, because it's still a long way to go to the end of the season.
What are your and your executive team's New Year objectives for the business in 2013?
Our objectives, simple. We uphold Scarlet's values. Things like honesty, commitment, hard work basically. So we're focused on the targets that we want to achieve. We know what they are. We've got to achieve them. So our commitment is absolute commitment.
What's your key message for 2013 to our loyal Scarlet supporters?
Biggest message as always to our loyal Scarlet supporters is thank you. And that's on behalf of everyone involved, but particularly the squad and particularly the coaching group. When you travel to away games and you see the Scarlet support base there, or when you're at a home game and you see the real core loyal support, it's fabulous. It's a huge lift for the boys. They understand what it means, and it makes a real difference to them. So the biggest, as ever, message has to be a real, genuine, sincere thank you. I think to our wider support base, now's the time to say, right, if one of our values is commitment, and if that's always been part of Scarlets, now's the time to commit. Now's the time to dig in. We've got a group of coaches and players who don't have any option. They can't not turn up any given week. They're there. They can't hide. They're on the field. Now, most of us in our lives don't perform in that sense. We don't perform in front of people. Whether we're good or bad on any given day, nobody really knows outside ourselves. When you're on a field or when you're in any form of professional sport, that is not an option. You have to perform, and you need all the support that you can get, because our guys are not hiding. They're out there fighting against heavy odds. And for me, therefore, our wider support base, now's the time to dig deep and be a real Scarlet. And now's the time to come and be part of everything that the boys are striving to achieve on the field, because it's going to be an exciting 9 games running for Pro 12.